All right, today we're tackling something we use every single day, but how many of us really understand it? I'm talking about money. It's this invisible engine that runs our entire economy, and we're going to pop the hood and see exactly how it works. So let's dive in. Seriously, just think about it for a second. You've got that bill in your pocket. It's just a piece of paper, right? It has no real inherent value. I mean, you can't eat it. You can't build a shelter with it. So why on earth does a barista happily trade you a real, steaming, amazing cup of coffee for it? Well, the short answer is trust. That's it. The whole thing works because we all agree that this paper has value. It's kind of like a shared story we all believe in. And the system that's built on top of that one simple idea, well, it's one of the most powerful and honestly most misunderstood forces on the planet. And that's what we're going to unpack. Okay, so to really get this, we have to go back to square one. Let's ask the most basic question you can think of. What is money, really? The answer is probably a little more specific than you'd guess.
So way back when, before we had money, we had to barter. And let me tell you, it was a huge pain. Imagine you're a chicken farmer and you're craving some bread. Well, you'd have to find a baker who not only has bread to sell, but also just so happens to need some chickens right now. That's what economists call the double coincidence of wants. And it's just super inefficient. Money comes along and completely solves this. Now you can sell your chickens to literally anyone for cash and then take that cash to any baker. It's a total game changer, letting us all specialize and trade so much more easily.
And this brings up a really important point. In economics, money and wealth are not the same thing. Your house, that's wealth. Your stocks, that's wealth. But you can't just walk into a supermarket and try to pay for your groceries with a stock certificate, right? Money is the specific stuff, the cash in your wallet, the numbers in your checking account, that everyone agrees to accept as payment. It's the most liquid asset we have, meaning you can spend it instantly.
So, for anything to be considered money in an official sense, it's got to do 3 specific jobs. It's like a 3-point checklist. If it can't do all 3, well, then it's not really money. Job number 1, and this is the most obvious one, is it has to be a medium of exchange. This just means it's the thing you use to buy stuff. It's the go-between. You hand it to the cashier, they hand you the goods. This is the part that fixes that whole clunky barter problem.
Second, it has to be a unit of account. Think of it like a yardstick for value. Instead of pricing things in chickens, like this car costs 5,000 chickens, we have a common measure like dollars. It makes it super easy to compare the price of a car to the price of a t-shirt. Everything is measured with the same stick. And third, it has to be a store of value. This means you can save it. You can earn $1 today and be pretty confident you can spend it tomorrow or next month. It lets you move your purchasing power through time. Now, sure, inflation can nibble away at its value over the long run, but generally, it holds up. Okay, so we've got the what and the why. We know what money is and the 3 jobs it does. But the biggest question is, where does it all come from? And I'll tell you, the answer is probably not what you think. This is the big aha moment for understanding how the whole system actually works. So who's actually creating all this money? I mean, if you ask someone on the street, they'd probably say, oh, the government just prints it, right? Or the central bank. And they're not totally wrong, but they're missing about 90% of the picture. Just take a look at this. It's kind of wild. The huge majority of the money supply, we're talking like 90% of it, is not created by the government or the central bank. It's actually created by regular commercial banks, like the one on your street corner. They create it basically out of thin air every time they make a loan. So how in the world is that even possible? Let's break it down. The magic behind this is called fractional reserve banking. Here's how it works. Let's say you go and deposit $100 into your bank account. Now, the bank doesn't just stick that $100 in a safe. Nope. Legally, they only have to keep a small fraction of it, let's say 10%, so $10. They then take the other $90 and loan it out to someone else. Now, that person takes the $90 and spends it. Maybe they buy something from a store. The store owner then deposits that $90 into their bank. And guess what? That second bank does the same thing. It keeps 10%, so $9, and loans out the other $81. This cycle just keeps repeating. And through this money multiplier effect, that single $100 deposit can end up creating up to $1,000 of new money in the economy. It's incredible. The banking system is literally a money creation machine. But, and this is a huge but, it's not creating new wealth. It's creating credit. For every new dollar created as a loan, there's a brand new dollar of debt on the other side of the ledger. Okay. So if the everyday banks are creating almost all the money, you might be wondering, what's the point of a central bank, like the Federal Reserve here in the US? Well, their job is to be the referee. They oversee this whole system and try to control the total amount of money out there. Let's take a look at their toolbox. Basically, the Fed has two main jobs. First, it's the bank for banks. It's there to make sure the whole banking system is stable and doesn't fall apart. And second, and this is the big one for us today, it's in charge of managing the money supply. By doing that, they can influence big things like inflation and even employment.
Now, the Fed has a few different tools it can use, but its main one, the one it uses all the time, is called open market operations. I know, it sounds super technical and complicated, but the idea behind it is actually pretty straightforward. So, when the Fed wants to put more money into the economy, it's like turning on a faucet. It goes out and buys stuff from the commercial banks, usually government bonds. And how does it pay for them? It just creates new digital money on its computer. That new money goes straight into the bank's reserves. And with more reserves in their pocket, what can the banks do? They can make more loans, firing up that money multiplier machine all over again. And if they want to take money out of the economy, you guessed it, they do the exact opposite. They act like a vacuum cleaner. The Fed sells government bonds back to the banks. The banks have to pay for them, and that payment sucks money right out of their reserves. Fewer reserves means fewer loans can be made, and the overall money supply shrinks. So you see, the Fed is constantly turning this knob, buying and selling to fine-tune the whole economy. All right, that was a lot. We've talked about barter, what money does, how banks make it, how the Fed steers the ship, but so what? Why does any of this matter to you? Well, because this system, this machinery, affects everything. I'm talking about the price of gas, your mortgage rate, the value of your savings, even the stability of the whole world's economy. There's a core idea in economics that's super important here. When there's too much money created, prices tend to go up. It's that classic idea of too many dollars chasing too few goods. That's inflation in a nutshell. And that's exactly why the Fed's job of managing how much money is out there is so incredibly important and so tricky. And, this system isn't without its dangers. Because banks lend out way more money than they actually have on hand, they're what we call highly leveraged. That's great when things are going well. It juices up profits. But it's terrifying when things go bad because it also magnifies losses. We all saw what happened in 2008. That was a brutal, real-world lesson in what happens when all that leverage blows up. Asset values plunged, banks went under, and the whole system nearly collapsed. And this brings us all the way back to where we began this whole journey, back to that simple word, trust. The value of that dollar in your hand, the power of a bank to create a loan, the Fed's ability to manage the economy, every single piece of this puzzle is built on our collective faith in the system. Our trust that the money we get paid will be worth something tomorrow. Our trust that when we go to the ATM, our money will actually be there. It's an amazing but also kind of fragile agreement we all have with each other. So if there's one thing you take away from all this, let it be that. This massive, complicated system that quietly runs our world, it all comes down to a shared belief. It's an incredible human invention, really, but it also leaves us with a pretty deep question to think about. If the entire monetary system is built on trust, what happens if, one day, we all stop believing in it?